In this video today, I am using test-driven development to write the core functionality of my new test step. In this video series, I would like to show you how I would add a new test step for ServiceNow Automated Test Framework. Hi, I am Philippe from Tokyo. Welcome to my ServiceNow series. I am in a new PDI and I open the ServiceNow Studio. Since the recording of the first episode, I had a chance to see the new ServiceNow Studio. The previous version was buggy for me. I would like to give this new version a try while working on ATF. The reasons I want to use ServiceNow Studio are to be able to connect to a Git repository instead of using update sets and use Visual Studio Code for a better development experience. And I am a tech lead and I need to be aware of ServiceNow capabilities. I pushed my new feature application from my previous PDI in a Git repository. I recorded the transition from my update set in a global to an application and then push it to Git. Let me know if you are interested. I may make another video outside of this video series. So, I am going to import my new features app. I added the credentials and the link to GitHub, and I am now able to import it in ServiceNow Studio. In this application, I added a test suite. I don't know why I didn't do that at the beginning, because having a test suite is likely the first thing I am doing when starting some development. I like to bookmark or make a favorite for my test suite, as this is one click away to get all the information about the new feature I am delivering. ServiceNow Studio is slow on the PDI. It seems faster than a customer instance. Then run the suite. The all users test should take about 13 seconds, and the one user should take between 0 seconds and 30 seconds according to the mood of the instance. Success. Within a few seconds, I was able to check that what I built before is still working, though I refreshed and upgraded the PDI. I will not keep what I am about to do, but it is just to show you. I take this one user test, I copy the first step as step number 2, using insert to query another non-admin user. Then I add a record validation to verify that the new user I got has a different SID than the first one. If I run the test, it fails, because I got the same SID. What I want is to give a developer the capability to use a custom test step that will replicate the record query step, but returning a different record randomly every time. So now I can start working on this new test step, but I will start small by making the core functionality itself, not the test step. As I would build this as an extension to a baseline ATF, I am going to create a new app on my own. I'll call it PHE ATF Extensions. Sorry for the lack of creativity. A description. Another benefit is to be able to import this application on any instance I need these ATF extensions on. In global, because it will be helpful for all applications. No roles. Continue. While ServiceNow Studio is creating the app, let me show you. In GitHub, I created a repository for my extensions app, which I added to a fine-grained token. Again, let me know if you want me to make a video about ServiceNow on GitHub. In ServiceNow Studio, I will not create a file now. I will just link my app to my Git repository as an initial commit. My branch is main, as I am doing trunk-based development. The URL, the credentials, and the famous command initial commit. I just realized I did that as system administrator, not myself. Let me log out and reconnect. Where do I get started? App has been created, so the first thing I am going to do is to create the test suite that will be the starting point for all the tests in my ATF extension. If you want to know what a feature can do or cannot do, review the test suite and its test. Just giving the name of my application for now. I have an issue with my update set. Why is that? I am new to ServiceNow Studio, so I'm not sure. Will I have 2 update sets with my naming global that will confuse ServiceNow Studio? There is one for my new feature and one for the ATF extension. So let's create a different one. Let's call it core functionality and see if it is still complaining. Let's close some tabs and refresh the app. Remember the test I created earlier to show you? I recreated it and named it GetRecordQueryRandom. Let's add it to the test suite finally. It's a baseline name. I may refine it later. The first feature I want to provide with my ATF extension is the capability to get different records every time you query one. So let's get started. To develop this feature, I will use a TDD approach. Test-driven development is a method to write a failing test that will force you to write the code you want to write. If you do not know test-driven development, as an introduction I recommend a video from Farley, for which I put the link in the description. Red, create a test that fails to prove that something is missing or is not working. Make sure that the test is capable of detecting a misbehavior. Green, you make the smallest change possible to make the test pass. And yes, the minimum so that you do not create untested code. Refactor, you can make all the refactoring you want as you are working on a successful test that will let you know if you modified the behavior. You know this. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Here you can. If you want a more in-depth video about TDD, let me know in the comments. I will use this method to develop this feature, so let's do it. I am creating a new test and I give it the name of the function I know I will write. GetRecordQueryRandom. That test will be the unit testing test. Then I add a server-side script, which is going to be a Jasmine test. And I will copy this describe. You see the note? Describe is only supported in global scope. Then I do not need all these commands. Submit. As notes, I will just put unit test. And if I run this test, I expect it to work. And it failed? Why? Oh yeah, a test should return a test result. Fair enough. Let's uncomment this test that should work. Let's add it to a test suite very early. Still having this update set warning. Let's switch. And open our new test. And if I run this test, it should pass now. Yes. Looking at the results, my test was red. It is now green. So my spec is, my suite should meet expectations. It proves me that I am capable to successfully run tests in my environment. For example, I would expect it to fail if I had created it outside of a global scope, though I have never tried. I will not refactor that for now. Let's commit my changes, and I am still struggling with my update set. This update set issue is a bit worrying, and I want to make sure that I am not missing anything. Source control, I can't commit? Why is that? Now I can. Maybe I need to be more patient. I have my test suite test. My test, but no suite and no test steps? I have this other update set. Yes, here is the test suite, but no test steps. Continue, commit comment, initialize test suite and test, commit files. Before going further, if I go back to ServiceNow Studio, open my extension app, can I just delete this app so that I can re-import it without having to wipe the instance? Failed. I am missing something here. Yeah, update set is core functionality. I am tempted to wipe the instance and try again. And I did. I wiped the instance and logged it as myself. From ServiceNow Studio, I am configuring to import my ATF extension and see. Imported. So the update set is my name. If I refresh the list of files in the app, I can see the suite and the tests. I bookmark the test suite so that I can have a direct access to it. Now I can run the suite. Success, which is incorrect because it was very fast and I should have one test failing. Yeah, no test steps here. I lost them. Let me recreate them quickly. Done. Let's go on. Let me copy the first describe. I am keeping the first one for now, so that I must have one successful test. If they both fail, I have another problem. I know I want to create a function that will be called getRecordQueryRandom. So, first thing is that it should exist. Expect getRandomRecord not to be undefined. So if I run the test, it should fail, but only the new test should fail. It fails with function is not defined. So the smallest piece of code that will make this test pass is to define the function. And I will define it directly here in the test. Defining getRandomRecord that does nothing is the smallest piece of code required. If I run it, it should pass. Now I can refactor. First, I said the function name would be getRecordQueryRandom. It is not the name that will come naturally to me, but it is similar to the test step name in ATF. Let's change the function name and run the test that should still pass. Yes. More refactoring. Obviously, having this function in my test is not very reusable, so I create a script include PHE ATF extensions. Let's copy and comment the function in the test and paste it in the script include. Rewrite it, format the code, and save. Because I am refactoring, meaning I just improve the implementation, not the functionality, the test should be successful. Yes, success. I didn't break anything. I can then continue cleaning the code by removing the comment, and I don't need this startup test anymore. GetRecordQueryRandom. I really don't like this name. I will probably name the step RecordQueryRandom so it appears next to RecordQuery in ATF, but the official name will be getRandomRecord. Rename, 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 format. I want to format and save. If I refactored correctly, the test should not fail. Success! Then I can commit. I created the script include and change the test, but no test steps. add getRandomRecord function, commit, and in GitHub I can see my commit. It seems I cannot commit the test steps to Git. I will check on that later. For the sake of this video, I am going to continue writing the function using TDD, but without committing to Git. So, I expect my function to exist. Now it says getRandomRecord, but I am wondering if I should return a random record or the sysid of a random record. Let me know your preference. I am going to say that my function should return a sysid, and I am likely to rename the function during a refactoring. Again, I expect that the return value when invoking the function to be a sysid. So let me use a real sysid to check against. And if I wrote the test correctly, it should fail because the return value is not correct. Indeed, expected undefined to be the string of characters. I fired up Visual Studio to work on the script include to get the feel using it, so writing the smallest line of code to make the test pass. Yeah, in Visual Studio I have a format and save. I save and sync the file, and if I run the test, I expect it to be successful. Yes it is. Red, green, refactor. What do I want to refactor? Nothing at the moment. Let's go on. What could be the next step? I want to instantiate GetRecord. So let's try. It should return a sysid of a sysuser record. Maybe the simplest way to query a GetRecord from sysuser table. Let's call it gruser. So gruser.get. Let's split that on several lines so that I just have to expect gruser.getRecord class name to be sysuser. If I run this test, it should fail. Well, it didn't. I see. Even if the sysid is incorrect for this table, the gruser is of class sysuser. So the importance of having a failing test first. Let's try in a background script. This is the code I have in my test with a gs.log to print the class name. Let's add a gs.log to return the result of .get. I guess it should return false if given an incorrect sysid. So in my test, I expect the gruser.get call to return true when getRandomRecord returns a valid sysid. If I run this test, now it should fail because expected false to be true. So let's write the smallest code change to make this test successful. Let me get the sysid of my profile and update the test and the code to use it. Running the test, success. Let's refactor the test. I don't think this test is meaningful anymore as it is too specific. I remove it. I still have a it should exist, but will tell me something went bad if it's failing. Now I am okay with the test. What about the code? No change for now. Next step. Now it is getting more interesting. It should return the sysid of an incident. As I am adding tests, my code will get more and more general. If I run, it should fail because I am not returning the sysid of an incident. The test passed for sysuser and failed for incident. Good. So now, I can't just return the sysid. I need to do something based on the table name I will pass as a parameter. For now, I do not have parameters. So probably it is the best time to say that the test should fail if I do not pass a parameter. I am making this test pending for later, and I am creating a new one, saying it should throw an exception if no table parameter. The syntax is a bit different here, as we need to intercept the exception we expect. For that, we write that we expect that if a function is calling our function under test, then it will raise an exception. And not any exception, it should throw incorrect table parameter. If I got it correctly, the test should fail because of this specific exception not being thrown. Yes, expecting function to throw an exception, and the other test is pending. I need to add the table parameter, and when I read a function, I like to read getRandomRecord from Oh, this AI assistant is scary. It read my mind, but yeah, that's what I wanted. GetRandomRecord from table. So, if not from table, throw incorrect table parameter. This is the smallest piece of code I can write to make the test pass. And the test should fail because I have other test calling with no parameter. And run should fail. Test run an exception is passed, but the test should return a sysid of sysuser failed. I need to update the test, adding sysuser so that the test should now be successful. Yes, it is. I can now re-enable this test with incident as a parameter, and I expect it to fail because I am not taking the table into account yet. Okay, so now I can write the code so that the test does not fail. So creating a GetRecord from table, is that enough? Let's return gr.getUniqueValue. Syncing and running. Yeah, failing because it's not enough. Let's add a gr.query. Syncing, testing, not enough. Okay, gr.next, syncing and testing. Success. Is there anything I want to refactor in this test? First, here it is not a glide record user, it's incident. Format and save, running, success. Next, from the code. Nothing yet. Okay, I should be committing by now, but I need to resolve the missing test steps issue. What's next? Having no query is fine, but I want to add the capability to have one. What kind of test can I add? Let's say that it should return a sysid of an active user. Let's try for inactive users for a change, so that I expect that gruser.active not to be true if the query is active. Oh, I made a mistake. I wrote passive, not active. Let's see how far I will go with this error, as the query does not matter yet. I am looking for creating a failing test. Running, success. Not that I expected. It proves me that my test does not work. I got puzzled a few minutes by that on adding some js.log, which I should have done in the background script, by the way. I expect gruser.active not to be true, and if I run the test, it is success. And the log shows me that active field is true. If I look at the user, active is true. The log is correct, but it is not the right way to test that. Let me rewrite the test to what I really want. I previously changed the spec to it should return a sysid of an inactive user and expect gruser.active to be false. If I run the test, it is failing with expecting true to be false. Let's say I still do not know that my query is incorrect and that I accumulated mistakes. Because I have a failing test, I can write the code, right? Let's add a with query. Okay, I again, stop reading my mind. Yeah, that's what I want to do. I have a query, I use it. Here maybe I may have rushed one step here to prove I need the if with query statement. Well, not to prove, but to explain why I need it. Thinking, if I run, I expect it to fail because of the invalid query. And because this test fails with an error trapped by ServiceNow itself, I have to deal with invalid queries first. Let's mark this test as pending and create a new one. The test now says that it should throw an exception if query is invalid. This is a test I wanted to do later, but because I encountered it on a genuine mistake, it's a good time to tackle it. So I expect a function calling getRandomRecord on this user with the invalid query to throw invalid query. Format and save, and now I should have a failing test because of the exception not being thrown. Yes, failed. Still, Java runtime raised an invalid query detected. And if I look down, I can see that one test failed with expected a function to throw an exception. I have to check the validity of a query before using it. Let me check in the documentation on developer.servicenow.com. API, server scoped, searching for query, in glide record I suppose, query, is encoded query valid. But here it is also is valid encoded query. Let's use this one. Can I do the query directly on the glide record itself? GetRecordQueryRandom for invalid query. This AI recommended code looks strange. Is there an isValidQuery method? No, another AI hallucination. It's isValidEncoded query. And I need to specify the table, so glide record from table dot isValidEncoded query with query. Thinking, if I run, it should work. Failed. Two tests are failing. The exception test is working, but now my other tests are failing. They don't have queries. Let me quickly try in a background script the behavior when the encoded query is undefined. Yeah, invalid query. If with query is defined and the encoded query is not valid, then I should get the exception. Thinking, now the test should pass. Success. Nice. No refactoring yet, as I am just thinking that I should have a new test. It should throw an exception if incorrect table parameter. Instead of this user, I will use an obviously invalid table name. If I run this test, it should fail. Success? Oh yeah, my bad. And the importance of having a test that fails first. So now it should fail. Yes. So now, if fromTable is undefined or gs.table exists, fromTable is false, thinking, the test should pass. Success. Let's refactor this test. Let's remove these new glide records I do not need, format and save, and if I did not make any mistake, the test should still be successful. Success! And the code itself seems pretty okay for me now. I will just put this on a single line for braceless if. And this one also. Will it be clearer if I split the conditions on multiple lines though? If not from table or if with query and thinking, running, it should be successful. Yes. Can I refactor this line also? Running. Yes. And for the fun, if I remove the exclamation mark, the test should fail. Yes, it fails, but the most important is, if you look at the test results, it is said, getRandomRecord should throw an exception if query is invalid. So you know that this exclamation mark is here to fulfill this requirement. Let me add it back and retest. It should be success now. Yes. I can now reactivate this test. It should return a SysID of an inactive user. Where was I working on it? So let's see how it behaves. I expect it to fail. Failing with invalid query thrown. Oh, so this is where I was. Okay. The query was invalid. Let's fix it. Let's run, and it should be success now. Ah, failing. Expected false to be false. This is usually a type mismatch issue, and this is probably the misbehavior I had earlier when I added this test. One way to fix that would be to use a .toString on the field and expect it to be the false string. The test should be success. Yes. The reason is that, let me show you in a background script. If I print the value of gruser.active and the type using typeof, I get respectively true and object. The active field is an object. If I print the type of active.toString, I am getting a string. Now I added 2 lines and using getValue. And the value is 1 and its type is string. It's not a boolean. And to be honest, the thing I learned while making this demonstration to you is that there is a getBoolean attribute I can use instead of getValue, and I got false and boolean. So let me change my test. Expect getBoolean attribute of active to be false. Format and save, and I expect it to be successful. And I learned that not by writing code, but when trying to understand why the test was not working. What other tests could I add? There is the case when the query returns no record. For that, I would like to verify the behavior of not getting any record. Back to the background script. No, before I need to go to the users table to make sure I can make a query that returns no records. Let's match the active is true, and I can add and active is false. That should get me no records at all. Okay, 0 record. So I copy the uncoded query, then gruser.add uncoded query with my query. Let's print gruser. Well, it is still returning a real record, so let's print its SysID. It's empty, so the test could be that it should return an empty string when no record is found. I update the query, and I expect the SysID to be an empty string. Format and save, and the problem I have with this test is that it should work while array. No, it failed. Well, good news. It is undefined. Back to the background script. Using a getValue and the SysID and its type, the getValue returns null. So let's update the test and expect the getValue to be null. Save and run. Will it be a success? Yes. So let's refactor the test. But now the problem I have is that this test does not force me to update the code. It just allowed me to verify what is happening in such a scenario. But at least I am demonstrating that I tested this scenario too and it's working. Regarding the code refactoring, I don't think I want to refactor. I am using getUniqueValue here. I am wondering if... Let me show you in the background script. I duplicate these 2 lines. And instead of using getValue, I will be using getUniqueValue, and let's compare the output. Null object and null object. Same results. So another refactoring I am doing for the test is to replace the getValue by getUniqueValue. As always, after refactoring, test. Okay, now I am getting the SysID for record. I may go to the latest requirement I am thinking about, which is that getRandomRecord should not return the same SysID when called twice. So let's have a user1 ID that is just a getRandomRecord on sysuser, no query, and a user2 ID with the same call. Then I expect the user2 ID not to be user1 ID. I don't expect the new one to be the same as the previous one. Format and save. If I run, it should fail. And it is failing because I got the same famous SysID. So I need to get a random record. If I look at the code, I can see a way to make this test pass with a small change. I will need to get a random value between 0 and the number of rows returned by the query. So I need the number of rows returned by the query. If I look at the GetRecord API documentation, there is the .getRecordCount, but I tend not to use it because of its not recommending to use glide aggregate. I think I will also use this choose window to get the row I want by adjusting the first and last row. No count needed. So I need to get the random record without using getRecordCount. I am adding a describe for a new function I will call getRecordCount, and it should exist. I need to make the other test pending, and if I wrote this test correctly, it should fail because the function does not exist. Yes, only this new test is failing. Okay, I will not show you again all the red green refactor sequences. Let me show you the outcome. So getRecordCount should exist. It should return an integer, so expecting the type of return value to be a number in JavaScript. It should return the number of rows for the sysuser table. And I have a query on sysuser, and I expect the returned value to be the same as the getRecordCount on sysuser. Note that I allow getRecordCount here because this is a test step, not a code that will be executed in production. And it is a different implementation than the one in getRecordCount. This forced me to have the same exceptions as the getRandomRecord. A table parameter is mandatory, and the table parameter must be valid. Maybe I could merge these two tests. And also, it requires a query. So I have the same exceptions too. The pending test of a sysuser table is to get the count on the incident table too, and it should return the number of active incidents, forcing me to take the query into account. It should return the number 0 when there are no matching records, where I expect the return value of getRecordCount to be 0. So this test led to this implementation. You already know the exceptions. The glide aggregate to count the number of rows from a table with a query, and I need to return the count aggregate as a number because glide aggregate returns a string. And the test for not having the same record twice forced me to update getRandomRecord, where I get the record count from a table with a query. And then, if not 0, I can get a random integer index between 0 and record count using the JavaScript math class. Then I use the choose window, which is 0 based. Oh, I have a problem here because if the random index is 0, I will get -1. I need to test that later. So I get one record and then return the unique value. And if I get a record count of 0, I will return new. I also have an issue with the if. I couldn't find a test to force me to write the if statement. It works without it. But I don't feel okay to query the database knowing I will not get any result. Probably more a performance test rather than a functional test. Before investigating the random index concern, I would like to verify my assumption regarding why I cannot commit my test steps. I can see here that my test is in application, PHE, ATF extensions. But if I look at my test, I can see the application is global. And in the metadata, the package is global and the application is also global. Can I move my test to the application? Move to ATF extension app, move. Yes, application is now PHE ATF extensions, and in the metadata, this package is global and this scope is the application. I refresh the list of files in ServiceNow Studio, the test step is here. And if now I want to commit, yes, it's here. My commit issue was just an update set issue. I will have to be more careful next time I am using ServiceNow Studio. Let's now try to investigate this run record concern. I have a test for 0 record, but what if the query returns only 1 record? Adding a new test as I want to make sure that getRecordCount should return 1 when only 1 record is matching. For that, I am going to query the incident table and arbitrarily get an inactive record, only 1 record, and get the record. Then I expect that the value returned by getRecordCount with the query to get this specific record to be 1. Format and save, test should pass. Success! Now I need a similar test for the getRandomRecord. I copy my new test in getRandomRecord, invoking getRandomRecord from the same table with the same query, but I expect the return value to be the sysid. Format and save. I will expect it to fail because of the choose window to be from -1. No? Success? Okay. Oh, I forgot to change the spec. It should return the same sysid when the query has sysid equal sysid. I will need to rephrase this. Save and retest. Success. I am surprised because the documentation does not mention this behavior. It is said that 0 will return the first row. But let me show you the power of TDD. I will update my code. So if I change my choose window to be from random index to random index +1, let's see if it breaks any of my tests. If I run a test, yes, still a success. I was able to refactor with confidence very quickly. Talking about refactoring, let me do a last one. The first refactor I would like to do is to change the name of my function to getRandomRecordID because this is what it does. If in the future there is a need for getRandomRecord, then I can add it. I will also mention that this is a function. Let's do a search and replace all. Done. Format and save. and in the script include rename a function, save and sync, and if I didn't break anything, success. And in the test results, which notation do you prefer, with or without the parentheses? Regarding the test name, it is not getRandomRecord unit testing, it is the PHE extensions unit test. I like to have a single test for all the unit tests to keep the execution time short. The functional test for getRandomRecordID is actually in the test suite. This record query random does not return the same sysid twice. If I run, it fails, unable to find undefined table sys user. I see, of course. And finally, run the whole test suite. Succeeded in 4 seconds. 4 seconds. I am done with the core functionality for now. I can give it to a developer who can create tests using random records. In the next episode, I will create the custom step. I hope you learned something in this video. Let me know in the comments what you like or dislike. This episode was not about test-driven development, it is mostly the method I enjoy doing. If you are interested, I can make a video dedicated to test-driven development, especially in ServiceNow. But do you agree with me if I say that I busted the myth that writing tests takes a lot of time because I just finished writing the test and I also finished the code?